with me, Karen Swain, and our very special guest teacher for this month, Jacob, or Jake Cooper. Welcome to the show, Jake.
An honor, Karen. Thank you so much for having me again. It just seems like just yesterday when we were talking. Yeah.
I know we've been chatting to the group already before we went live, and I was telling Jake that I watched about half an hour of our conversation on the show, which was the year before last, I think. And I was so chatty, I didn't shut up. Shut up. And I said, I think it was you, Jake. I think you're one of these people like me that says, please tell me your life story stamped on your forehead. Do you find that when you're with people just talk?
Well, I am a therapist, so I guess people feel comfortable just being themselves. And that's a great compliment when someone feels comfortable in their presence to be themselves. I've done a lot of therapy sessions. The most complimented therapy session I've ever done was with a client who just talked the whole time. I didn't say one word. And they say, geez, Jacob, that was the best session I've ever had. So I'm learning the less Jacob, the better Jacob these days, right?
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I had a guy on the show last week I didn't know too much about. I tried to watch some of his videos, and I love it when you just get a guest that's so passionate they just talk and you can just sit back and just throw a couple of questions. It's cool. But anyway, I'm sure you're like that too. Let me read a short bio, because if you want to know the long bio, you can go back to our interview in.
You'll have to be here till midnight for the long bio. It's like the short bio is good. Yeah, you're reading like one of my books practically if you read it. Yeah.
Well, based on your near-death experience, which we discussed in the last interview, and past life regressions, Jake Cooper shares insights about the mystery of life on the other side of the veil. Passionate about promoting healing, Jake is a best-selling author of Life After Breath, which was the book that we discussed last time, and his latest book out now called The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. He's a sought-after speaker on grief, wisdom, and consciousness, offering meditation and mindfulness seminars to help people find purpose and overcome their fear of death. Jake is a clinical social worker, Reiki Master, and certified hypnotherapist specializing in past life regressions. Jacob uses his extensive personal and professional experience to empower humanity one soul at a time. So it's great to have you back on the show. I loved the conversation we had last time. Just like you said, it was fun. And we got into so many things. We were talking about Wayne Dyer and Shirley MacLaine and all sorts of things. We were going there. But we are here to chat about the next book. I haven't read the first one. I got an idea of what it was about when we chatted. What is the second one about?
The second book, The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder, is Life After Breath is more of my memoir with my NDE, so I had my NDE at a very young age, and it's really about what life was like after having this NDE at such a young age, and how I was able to really, pull the pieces together. But the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is more of the lessons, from my NDE, so you think of a ladder and you think of my name, Jacob. It actually had my NDE on a ladder in a playground in a slide. So there's so much symbolism within my NDE, but it's those kind of steps from the hereafter for the here now that are always connected from the heavens to the earth plane. So my hope is that people reading this book won't have to wait until they cross over, to have afterlife awareness, that this book will give them, that recall that they all have within. But a funny story about the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is, I told my grandmother asked me, what's the name of my book? And I said, it's The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. And she goes, The Wisdom of Jacob's Bladder. I go, no, that's something else. But it's The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. And, it's this book is very unique, I think.
Yeah, I remember on the show last time you asked, what should we call the book, Karen? So how did you come up with the name?
The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. How did I come up with it?
Yeah.
You told me to do it. No, no.
I
Honestly, I get quiet, with my titles, because I think each book that I write has a certain energy, and a certain just intention to it. And so the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder, Life After Breath is more of my karma, my story, and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is my dharma, my purpose. So it's the meaning and the purpose behind my NDE, which was the work of over around almost 30 years now going on, in what I was able to find meaning and make sense of, and I was able to cultivate this within a book.
Oh, I love that. It's sorry, I'm going to add my spotlight. The first book was your karma and the second book is your dharma. Beautifully said.
Yeah. And I think it was really grief that got me, to this book in a way, but got me through it. When I was writing my book, The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder, I lost my best friend, right when I was, 3/4 in, I just totally stopped. And I was doing an event with an evidential medium, and she had no idea I was working on this book. And she was able to read my friend, and he said, "Why'd you stop writing? Finish the book for me." And so grief was, in a way, was something that, really hit home with me, but it gave this book so much more meaning. And there was a whole other rung to this ladder through, my own personal loss, so grief is a big area that, is utilized within this book as well, because I found between myself and a lot of clients the last couple of years in particular, grief has heightened in a way.
Grief is heightened. Do you think that's because of there's been a lot of deaths over the last few years?
I would say, but grief is a very versatile word. Grief could be of a loved one, but grief could be of a job, a relationship. But I think there was also the last couple of years a grief of the world that we knew and the world that we have and the change, that happened. So, grief is really about an ending. And so when you're able to utilize this afterlife awareness, of my NDE and stuff like that, that could help, to work. I view it as belief to work with grief. There's no darker feeling than just seeing a complete end of just blackness and nothing more.
Oh, I love that. Belief to work with grief.
Belief to work with grief. Yeah, that's the goal of, my work.
Humans aren't good at endings or change. It's really change, isn't it? Like the ending of a life or the change of a life, because life doesn't end, like you never end. And the ending of a job or a marriage or, the ending of something, I don't know. Humans, how do you think that we can bump up against change in a better way?
It's interesting because you look at animals, right? And if their terrain is jeopardized or threatened, they don't just sit there and have wishful thinking and wish that all of a sudden there's going to be, some water there, whatever. They migrate to different pastures. But humans, with something that ends, we often just sit in that time frame and we could be in that space for decades, and so I think what's important is to not resist grief. I think grief is hardwires in us. We've had thousands of decades of and hundreds of years of losing loved ones before us, so it's nothing new. So I think the important thing is to allow ourselves to process grief on an emotional level, but also to have a heightened GPS, with grief. And I think having this afterlife awareness will allow that box that we see that loved one and, crossing over to maybe transform from having loved one that's, buried 6 feet under to seeing that you could, bury that body, but you can never bury a soul, that the soul will go on. The connection, this box that you have with that loved one has a space to expand and could have a continual relationship, from here and when they're over there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, there's so many people that have died of late, but my first stepmother transitioned the other day. And
Wow.
I've had all these people reaching out saying, I'm so sorry for your loss. And it's so interesting when you live the life I live, that seems so inappropriate because there's no loss. There's no loss. In fact, she was in hospital for about 10 months. I didn't get to see her in hospital. I kept procrastinating about going to see her, but the hospital she was in or the facility that she was in wouldn't let me enter because I'm not vaccinated. And then she was moved to a palliative care for a week. And so the day she transitioned was the day we were going to go and see her, which is interesting. So I did not see her physically to say goodbye or to say whatever you say to somebody who's dying. What do you say? See you on the other side. But it's always kind of awkward when someone's about to transition. What do you say? So I didn't get that physical goodbye, but it doesn't bother me because I know that once she's transitioned, I've got that really close connection I can have if I want to. And it's so funny. This morning I'm washing the dishes. I feel like she's so around me at the moment. I feel like I'm being watched. It's like she's so present. I'm putting the washing out. I feel like she's watching everything I do. It's so interesting. But there are definitely no goodbyes when you understand that we're always connected. Yeah.
Yeah. And, the more that we're able to see ourselves as a soul, more so than a body, the more possibility of room for these unseen connections to take place in our life. When we're seeing ourselves as a body, then that loved one goes, our association with the loved one is just that physical body. But when we see ourselves and others as a soul, there's possibility for continuity and relationship, to continue, and even more of an expanded one, where now all of a sudden there's a 24/7 hour, availability, that wasn't maybe in this lifetime. But I think what's important is to understand that grief is not something that, that's equal. Everyone has a different relationship with the loved one and a different way of processing uh, based on, their own level. And so I always say there's a human side. I think grief is a very human thing, but, spirit doesn't necessarily grieve because it just really knows that there's an infinite connection that we have. So I think grief is more of a human thing, but the
Totally.
spirit part of ourselves does not grieve that because it has a knowing of the infinite connections that we have that can never be severed.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they've got access to us, clear access to us, clearly,
Right.
because they kind of
Sometimes too much. Yeah.
Yeah, they hover. Like I say, I'm washing the dishes, hanging out the washing, and I feel like someone's watching me. Like I can feel her around me, watching me the whole time. I shouldn't really talk to her, but I'm like, I'm busy.
I'll tell you a funny story. I had a friend of mine who was like a very big medium, and he, was kind of into me, his whole life, when we knew each other. And so during the reading, they picked up on him, and they're like, he watches you in the shower. And I'm like, oh God. So that's like validation. That's him, So, but sometimes we need to hear that, as funny as it sounds, to know that only that person could know. Because, some people, they're like, they wouldn't ever associate that. Or I've known someone who got a read with one of their grandparents, and normally with your grandparents, they're like lovey-dovey. A medium would never say negative word, but the medium said your grandfather was, every last negative word imaginable, and it was spot on. So, you would never guess that, or think that of a grandparent, but that's how true this stuff is. There's evidence of this stuff that you just couldn't make up.
People are often worried about spirit watching them in the shower or watching them having sex.
Yeah. Yeah, there's boundaries most of the time, but this dude in this life had no boundaries, and over there, even more so. And he loved to dance too. And even during the reading, he was, like the medium's like, I'm trying to read him, but he's doing all these dance moves in front of me. And I'm like, dude, I'm like trying to get a message for Jacob here, So they keep their personality. That's what's important to know. They keep, their passions and what they loved. And so what we experience here, magnifies and expands more over there. It's not just gone. We continue some of the stuff here over there as well too.
Yeah. I was at lunch with a girlfriend the other day, and her mother transitioned how long ago? Last year sometime, maybe 6 months ago. I don't know time. Anyway, the mother was very old and frail and in a wheelchair and had lost her cognitive, response.
Functioning,
she was dementia. And oh my God, she was such a stoic woman. And to see this frail little old woman all hunched over in a wheelchair and skinny, it's sad to see some people at the end of their life. Like, she was old, she was in her 90s. After knowing her as this amazing woman. And so we're at lunch the other day, and she's tearing up as she's speaking about her mother, saying she still misses her. And I'm having this thought, what part of her do you miss? Do you miss the old, frail woman that had dementia? Or do you miss grief is such an interesting thing. It's like, it's almost when people are at the end of their life, you pray that they have this graceful transition so that they're not experiencing their pain anymore. And then when they're gone, now you're grieving their presence, but their presence they weren't they weren't enjoying themselves.
Right.
Like, what would you say to people who are still sort of in grief, especially if someone who's been old and sick that's died? It's like you pray for their death, and then when they're dead, you want them to be back.
Oh, sure. That's very common, very normal. I think what's important is just to allow, there's like a river of grief, as they say, right? So it will take you where you need to go. And I do believe that the way out is through, our emotions and our reactions, and not, bypassing those things. But at the same time, allowing, higher awareness to come through, in our pain. So it's a lot of it is almost kind of like, inner child, kind of stuff where we're feeling very pain is to come from an angle of compassion, understanding, but also speaking maybe some things that might be, also true on the other side too, so having objective understanding, of higher awareness, but also allowing the human part too. But I think what's important, obviously, and this has been through countless, readings, is loved ones are not what we remember them at their last days. That they come through very youthful, how they want to represent themselves, and how, in a way you might have remembered themselves in their primes. So they come through in their pinnacles, and
Yeah,
going through that at the struggle is not like what they want to be remembered by. But I
exactly.
think
Yeah.
I think the issue is, this concept of possessiveness, that we think that we own loved ones, or that they come from us, and we're
Hmm.
c- we're connected to them, but they come from the spirit realm. This earth is just kind of like a rental.
Hmm.
People are driving these rental cars thinking they own them, and we don't. Nothing really here we own. It's, the only thing that continues is the relationships we build, the impacts that we have, the love that we give and receive. But other than that, this is all a rental kind of thing. It's not permanent. So I think really understanding that the loved one, isn't owned by us, and to allow them to go on their journeys. Um, you know, we were talking about Wayne Dyer, right? He would always, in his some of his talks, he would talk about two different people when it comes to loss or grief. He would say, when you're by the shore of an ocean, there's a boat that's passing in the distance, kind of like behind your head, right with the water. And one person will say to the other person, geez, that boat is gone. I cannot see that boat. And the other person, will look up at that person and just say, geez, what are you talking about? Just because you don't see it doesn't mean that the boat is not just as strong, not as just as beautiful. But just because we can't see with the physical eyes does not mean that it's not continuing on its voyage. And so that's the kind of way that we could look at death in a way. It's a different transformation. It's moving from one room to the next room.
Hmm.
It's a transition, but just because we can't see with the physical eyes does not mean that it's still not as strong, as beautiful as it ever was. It's just going on in a new way. So,
Beautiful, beautifully said. Absolutely. I think that grief too is such a personal growth lesson in how to take your focus off you and put your focus on another. Because as humans, we're so obsessed with
right,
ourselves, right? We're like, my loss, my problem,
right.
me. But
Does that, yeah,
when you think of the other, so I'm thinking of like my friend, even my, my first stepmother, I call her my dad had a few wives. She was wife number two,
right,
mum was wife number one. And she was like 75, so she wasn't too old, but she had been suffering with cancer for like 10 months, maybe longer. And when you think of where she is now, like she's come to me and she's radiant, like she's so radiant, and she's so at bliss, and she's so at peace, and she was
mm,
not in bliss and peace when she was alive.
right,
How much of that do you want to keep going? How much of that do you want to experience?
right,
And so when you think about where she is, you can feel happy for her instead of sad for yourself. It's like, where are you putting your focus?
right, right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. And you know, sometimes in this life, if we're looking for happiness, that's, in the world outside of us, we're not going to find it. But we're able to find it with this interconnection we can. And I think there's a lot of people who attach themselves and they just want to take and take, and it's all about them. And then there are people who are untethered and they just believe in giving, and they don't have attachment as much to
Mhm.
this. They allow the loved ones, and life to unfold as it should. So
Mhm.
I think if we're able to look at the universe in a different way, that it's not random, that every, passing in a way has its time and place, and
Mhm.
that there's reasons for particularly the most significant moment of our life arguably is when we come in and when we go,
Mhm.
we can allow trust in the process. But sometimes our judgment triumphs, the wisdom of God or the wisdom of the universe, and that becomes a problem. It's a
Yeah.
very, in a way, It's a very self-aggrandizing, point of view that we think that we know better than the universe. And so I
Right.
think really it's about our relationship with the universe. And Einstein would always say this: is the universe, an intelligent, loving place, a vengeful place, or ambivalent place? And how we view the universe will determine the trajectory of our lives and how we live it and see it. It's so true.
Yeah. So Einstein said that. Say that again.
Is the universe a loving and forgiving place? And I'm kind of paraphrasing, but along these lines, is the universe, kind of like a vengeful, negative place, or the universe, a place where there's, not one or the other, just ambivalent.
Yeah.
So,
And
I,
Wayne
I
Dyer said something similar. Do you remember what Wayne said? He
said a
talked
lot of stuff, but
about the universe being a friendly place or a hostile place. Like when you start to
right, yeah, he kind
believe.
of like spun it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's you could spin it so many different ways, but it's so true. And so what comes first? I always ask, the chicken or the egg, how we view life and how we view the universe as God, or, our, what I'm saying, like how we view God in our lives. And so I think the two are hand in hand. Our life experiences could inform how we view God, and how we view God could inform our life experiences and how we see the world. So they run in
Yeah,
parallel.
exactly. Like last time we spoke a lot about cognitive reframing, which is what you teach. Maybe you want to, for the people that haven't seen the show, maybe you want to go into what cognitive reframing is.
Yeah, as a therapist, it really was, one of the pioneers of it was a man by the name of Albert Ellis. But I really think cognitive reframing is very Buddhisty, in a sense that we have a way of seeing things, right? And then we could find different ways through our thoughts, to alter how we see things. So, right, Wayne's background was a psychologist. He taught at St. John's University and all that. But I think his most famous saying was, "When they change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." So really, reality has very little to do with what's happening in the external world, and more so to do with our internal world and how we interpret the external. And so, with a lot of my clients, we'll come to conclusions and look at things one way. But if we just have that gentle shift in how we see things, it could open up so many different avenues, and how they see the world in such a different place. So, we live on one planet, but we've had so many different experiences in this one planet. The planet
Mhm.
has gone through some slight changes, but it's the same planet. But we could be on this planet, it could feel like a totally different planet depending on where we're looking from, where we're coming from, in this life.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Sitting at lunch the other day, we're having a lovely time. And then we get on the subject of the death of her mother. So instead of framing it like my mum led an amazing life, she's at peace now and she's
Mm,
happy, it's like she started tearing up and her bottom lip started to quiver as she thought about how she misses her.
mm,
So which frame are you looking through life? Like that, the joy that you had this time with your mother and she lived a full life and she
right.
finished, or going into I miss her. It's just like, where do you want to go? It really is our choice,
Right.
isn't it? Yeah.
Right. And no, even, and not to knock like organized religion, but Christianity, for instance, the big emphasis is the cross and a lot of the torture that happened. The
Right.
emphasis isn't as much on the life of Christ and what Christ stood for and the messages. A lot of it is on the painful experience, which I think as
Yeah.
a society we're very wired somewhat to fear and pain.
Mm-hmm.
We've been kind of hardwired to so many different programming. So it's like, even in death, and I can't blame people. Like a lot of the belief systems is based on that ending versus the beauty of the life itself and what it meant. And so, I think it's an insult almost to the person if we constantly just focus on the end, not the life that we live. I think the
Right.
greatest complimentary compliment to our loved one is making sense of their lives and using their model to integrate in our life. And so I had a grandfather that I look exactly alike,
Really?
but yeah, exactly. I could send you a picture, but
Are
he
you
wasn't
sure
into
you're not
this.
him? You might be him.
I could. Well, I'm getting to this. He at the end, he was like, I can't curse because we're on YouTube, but I wasn't into any of this afterlife mumbo jumbo. But he said, I lived through you, and therefore I can't die. And it's so true.
Ah,
The loved ones that we're connected to live through us, and you know, in a way, the lives that we live are proof that they lived.
mhm, mhm.
Because how we've been impacted by them is proof of their existence. So I think in a way we always look at the loved ones and focus on the afterlife that they're living. But guess what? We are their afterlives. The
Mm-hmm.
lives that we live,
Oh,
right? And
mm-hmm.
what we're doing is their afterlife. They're
Right.
connected to us. So most of the time, like I know, like in my readings, it's like, geez, it's like Jacob, just live. Like stop thinking about me. Just enjoy life, and live for them because they're watching us and they want to grab their popcorn and be entertained. So like
Absolutely.
like I know you're talking about your friend going out and having fun. Like that's the stuff that they love. They don't want to necessarily just see us meditating all day. They want us to like have real practical experiences. And I think the most spiritual thing that we could happen is from life itself and what we're able to live here on this planet. The depth of our experiences here.
Yeah, I have a cousin, my dad's cousin who died. Well, there was two of them. There was his cousin and then his cousin's husband, and he died at 92. And the message I got for him, which I didn't say at his funeral, because a lot of people don't believe you're talking to dead people. If there's anything that he wanted to tell people from the other side is enjoy your life. I did. So he was someone
Right.
that was totally skeptical, but he had a racing business. He worked for encyclopedia. Like he just really enjoyed life. He had lots of different businesses and he traveled, and they started Nutrimetics in New Zealand, which was one of the first natural skincare companies, which turned into a makeup company. Yeah, he really enjoyed his life, and that was his message: enjoy your life. I did. I
Right.
thought that was so
Oh,
cute.
sure. And listen, it's like we are a society obsessed with the stars.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the stars in space, the same, like, you boil it down, that's, it's here in us too, in our bodies too. And so when we're looking up at someone that we love, like a celebrity, whatever, we're looking at them because they remind us of something within ourselves, the greatness within
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, the beauty within ourselves. And Jesus himself would say that I'm just, the kingdom that I'm connecting to within is also in you too. So I think we have to start to see the things that we love as not outside of ourselves, but within. It's just mirrors of how beautiful we are. And sometimes we have these reminders, through some of these celebrities who have just as many flaws, if not more. From my own experience in talking to some celebrities, it's the regular people, but the greatness, the beauty, all that is just a reflection of what we have inside of ourselves deep within.
Mm.
That's why we gravitate to it so much.
So
So,
I haven't asked you this question before, and we haven't discussed it. You had your NDE when you were 3 years old and experienced, we'll go over a little bit of what you experienced, but
right.
have you had any connection with extraterrestrial, celestial beings? Have you had, you know?
You know what? Every single person these last couple months have been asking me, you know, that I I have, but not like I haven't gotten abducted or anything like that. It's just sometimes at night, like I'm meditating and I could literally feel that, connectivity. And
Uh-huh.
so absolutely. But, that's become I've noticed that my friends who aren't into this stuff have now like totally bought into extraterrestrial stuff.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
I think so many, media platforms are just understanding that this can't be hidden anymore. And I think almost as a society, we're ready for that information. The issue is like how I think they're more closer to ET than they are towards, like people coming after us and attacking us. But, the issue now is just they're just being throughout the last, several decades are so hidden, but we
Yeah.
can't hide from it. There's so much proof right now in videos and images that how could you deny, their existence?
Yeah. So when you were 3 and you had the NDE, do you want to just go into it a little bit for people that haven't read your book or seen the show
Right.
with you, just what you
What,
experienced?
right. Well,
Mhm.
what I'll say also is, UFOs, NDEs, angels, to me, they're all a part of this collective consciousness, I think.
Mhm.
That's like
Mhm.
all a part of it. There's different levels, of higher awareness, but they're all just really a part of it. But September of 1993, I had my NDE when I went to a playground, and I had something called whooping cough, otherwise known as pertussis. And as I was climbing the ladder onto the slide, I just began coughing and began suffocating. And so I lost, all of my control or I should say control, but I lost my ability for any form of human breath, and I was totally just suffocated. And once, I was able to let go of suffering and suffocation in my human body was when I was able to really was able to transport to the other side, and cross over. And so this NDE encompassed, so many different things that I highlight in my books, but really it was all the things that was always inside of me that I wasn't aware of, for those first 3 years of my life that I might have forgotten to some degree. But, it's just a profound encounter with my own spirit guides, angels, loved ones on the other side, awareness of past lives. But the most important awareness is the purpose that we all have here in this life, because I was given autonomy to stay or to go, in my NDE. And then I was shown, a lot of different people that I would be, helping out and speaking to. And so that was, I can't say the nail in the coffin because, can't bury us, but that was the kicker for me.
Yeah.
Because the afterlife is always going to be there, but it doesn't have to be after. It doesn't have to be
Hmm.
after this life. And so having this awareness really motivated myself to stay and to give over this to other people. And that's what I do to this day, is when I was, when I had all of my life in this human body taken from me, I was given back eternal awareness of life. And I recognize there is no death, there's death of the body, but not of the soul. And so I think a lot of people mourn those who have crossed over, but we don't mourn enough those people who are living who are not really living.
Hmm.
And,
Hmm. Hmm.
so I think life is a choice in a way. We have to choose life, you know, and so I think my motivation was to give back the same beauty and the same insight to other people that I was given in my NDE. And again, givers and takers. I could have just taken this experience and that was it. I could have just had a small me and would have been a lot more convenient to the ego, right? I don't have to
Hmm.
go on these YouTube videos and have all these trolls coming at me and all this stuff. But you know what? I did it because it wasn't about me. This NDE was so much more than me. I was just, I guess a messenger of it, but it wasn't really so much about me. It was
Yeah,
really about others.
it sounds like you were given your marching orders at 3, but you're a part of a group of beings that called light workers or the wanderers or the light weavers or the difference makers or the star seeds. There's so many names for people
Right.
that have elected to be here on earth at this time to be part of the shift in human consciousness. And what I've seen over 13 years of being on media is that the biggest shift that has been happening on media is this awareness of life after death and who we are beyond the veil and who we can be when we're
Right.
connected. I mean, when I first started putting up my shows, the shows that had the most views was anyone that spoke about an NDE. And I scratched my head and I thought, wow, people are asking what happens when you die. So there is this mass movement within the collective consciousness of humanity to have this awareness come. And it sounds like even before you came here that you said that you would be part of that awareness, which is something
Right.
that our extraterrestrial or highly evolved beings from other dimensions and planets, they understand this unity with this this expanded unified field or potential, creative potential.
Right.
So this is back to the question, are you connected to your galactic mob? Like, are they channeling and talking to you like you're talking to the Arcturians? Anything going on there, Jacob or
Well,
Jake?
well, more so through my books, really. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I, started off like probably at the lowest level of I went to community college and I started off at like the lowest possible non-credit reading and writing class, when I started college. So I'm not a natural writer. But kind of like Edgar Casey, right? He was a very simple man, but once he just kind of channeled this, amazing stuff happened. And that's kind of in a way, the way I see myself with my writing. I'm not a natural writer, but I channel a lot of this through my books. So it's mostly, particularly my second book, is a lot more kind of channeled information that I get that people need to hear, as well as each morning I wake up and I have, a lot of different messages for others. And so I really view, and this is the reason why I chose the title, The Wisdom, because I think wisdom is the oxygen of our times. When we're able to have heightened awareness, that will allow us to not only survive as a society, but to thrive when we have a solid foundation that we're living our life from. I think it's very important. and to constantly evolve that, because so many people, are just in fight or flight. We see the world as dangers, so we fight the danger, we flight the danger, or we just freeze with the danger. And so we have to start seeing, life as a safe and beautiful place, and to really allow ourselves to get into those deeper gears of wisdom. But the part of the issue, and I had this myself in my life, was, I saw that I would be speaking in front of a lot of people, and a part of me remembered that this was a part of it. But as when I was younger, I just wanted to be this big Tony Robbins guy and talk about mental health and insight. And I just didn't, it didn't catch me that I was supposed to really be talking about this NDE. And so that's a microcosm of so many of us, where we're searching thousands of miles away, for all this stuff. But in reality, all that we're looking for, or all that we need to do, is in our own backyard.
Right.
And so for myself, this NDE was just became that's my message in many ways, and
Mhm.
I've expanded on it. But if we're able to really open up that doorway of our backyard, beautiful things could happen. It's a beautiful symphony that we could sing to the world. We don't have to abandon ourselves, or muscle something to become something. We already all are all that we are seeking. We just have to remember, who we really are.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I know exactly how you feel, Danny. When I was years ago, I was sitting on the couch, sort of stressing about what's the message I'm here to bring to the world. I want
Right.
to make a movie that's going to change the world. What'll I do? Like, I'm trying to come up with big concepts. And my guides just said to me, "Oh, Karen, stop stressing. Just write something down." Because I never saw
Right.
myself as a writer either. And I said, "Well, what'll I write down?" And they said, "Write what you know." That's what they said to me. Just write what you know. And I said, well, I know about death because I've had so many people die on me,
Right.
starting with mum when I was a teenager. And all of them came back to say one thing: I didn't die. So I'm like, I know
Right.
about
Right.
that.
Right. Right.
So there's a
Yeah.
question. Sorry, go on. Go on.
In a reading, you've never heard someone saying, "Hey, I'm here, hanging out under the tombstone 6 feet under. We're just having parties underground." Like, it's never happened. That people are just having these underground parties, and I don't know, they have the sewer rats joining them. Like, I don't like, it's never happened yet. So,
Who was I
but here's
speaking
the,
to?
but
Yeah,
here's
go.
the thing. That's a very common, fear that people have. They'll just experience nothing, or they'll
Yes,
find themselves
just
just
dead zones.
continuing to live, in the tombstone. But I say,
Yeah.
if you had anywhere to hang out, why would you hang out there if you could be anywhere? You could, technically, but why would you elect to do that?
I was talking to someone the other day. Who was it? Do you remember? Who was it? Somebody who was on the show. It might have been in the Inner Sanctum. Who was it? I can't
Right,
remember. Who was talking about a psychic, and she was talking about there are these different astral worlds that we experience because of our
right,
belief systems. Much like we experience our belief systems here, we can recreate, or we can create a whole belief system, a whole realm according to what we believe. Like, there's the hell realms, and she said there's the dead realms, where people who don't believe in life after death, and they believe that they just should
right,
lie still underground, and they've created that because of their belief systems. So I thought
right.
that was crazy.
That's here. But what's fascinating with NDEs is I've seen the biggest atheist of atheists have
Yeah.
NDEs,
Mhm.
and what they experience has nothing to do with their prior viewpoints.
Right. Yeah,
One of them in
interesting.
particular, her name is Nancy Ryans. I met her before.
Yeah.
She was like a big atheist, and she had this profound NDE, and it blew her mind. So NDEs are fascinating to me because it has very little to do with actually other than your life review, it has very little to do with your belief systems prior to that. And that
Hmm.
to me makes it so grounded, and
Hmm.
so real, that there's people with NDEs, for instance, who are visually impaired, auditorily impaired,
Hmm.
those who don't even speak the language that they're seeing on the other side. And they're having these profound experiences that they could never have, physically, or just, based on their outlooks. And even religion. You have people who are Buddhists, people who have the Islamic faith, Judaism, my faith, Christianity, and what they experience has nothing to do, many times with what they, experience. To me, that is a more authentic NDE when it has nothing to do with the experience than anything else.
Hmm. Yeah, one of the most amazing things I saw was a woman who was taken on a regression, and the hypnotherapist, she had taken her glasses off to lie down and be regressed, had asked her to read something, and she sat up and started reading it under this hypnotic state,
Mhm.
and then went back. And then when she came out, he said, you read this while you were under regression without your glasses on.
Oh,
And she
wow, wow,
said,
wow.
Oh, I knew these eyes worked. Yeah, it's so interesting. But our belief, like I'm wearing glasses, our belief is that they don't work. And while she was under hypnotic regression, she wasn't engaging in that belief, and her eyes were reading. Yeah, anyway, interesting. Joanne has a question. Diane, do you want to come on camera and ask it?
Is it okay before I do that? Because there was one question about physical changes through past life regression. So I know on that segue, Dr. Brian Weiss, I think, his daughter was about to have like some type of cataract surgery. And she went to Brian's regression, and she wasn't, he did his thing, but she kind of like did her own thing. She's also a clinical social worker, but she just kind of like tried this. She's like, all right, whatever, we'll see what happens. And she found out she was burnt in the fire, and I guess her eyes might have gotten damaged. And right after the regression, she didn't need any degree of, she didn't have any vision issues after the regression. So it's amazing the healing that could come through from past life regressions. And I've seen some of that too. It's just so versatile in terms of the mind, body, spirit, and how it could really provide such an oasis of healing, for so many participants.
Well, you're answering Joanne's question. Do you want to come on camera, honey?
Yeah.
Joanne?
Sure.
There you go.
Hey, Joanne.
Hi there. Yeah, I was just interested in, in your personal experience, any kind of healing someone might have had after having a regression, because I have heard of that happening. And I do have a family member that lives with severe chronic pain, and I just wondered if that could be maybe helpful for them.
Yes, I do see a lot of my clients have a lot of healing, physically as well. But I also see a lot of healing within family dynamics. I think Shakespeare said that this life, this life is kind of like a theater or a stage of life, it's something like that. And I think the regressions will allow us to understand the different roles that we play, and sometimes the dynamics that we get stuck into, but to have some insight and wisdom to understand those dynamics, that they're more so for the school of life and to learn some of the lessons to balance things out. So I think it's so versatile that people from, the physical body, from the family dynamic, from the emotional standpoint, and even trauma where people, just have unexplained traumatic tendencies that aren't explained in this lifetime. And when you're able to go back to past life regression, a lot of that could be healed. So I've seen a couple repeat clients who, from the mind, body, spirit kind of avenue, have been very much healed through repeat, sessions in a way.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And it just a lot of it is the higher mind, what we hold on to, and how much that informs this physical body. We're able to let go some of that stuff. In the higher mind, we could move the needle from that life into this life, and we could step in and be present with this life.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
Joanne. Sherry, do you want to come on camera, huh? To ask your question? Yeah, cool.
Got
Yeah,
VIP
sure.
here.
Hi. Hi, Jake. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Sherry?
No, I was just wondering about the type of reading, but it's kind of been answered since I asked my question. So you do the regression, is it?
Right. I think a lot of people think that the past life regression is a past life reading. So sometimes there's confusion. What I would say is it's just why I got into it was having this NDE. I had a lot of also memories of past life recollections that I would have, it throughout my life that have just come to me. And it just kind of dawned on me that past life regression in the higher mind is within all of us. And sometimes we forget it. So we're able to really tap into it. We all have these memories and recollections deep within, but it's also a great tool for grief, because when we're able to see ourselves living many different lives, we can understand that the body doesn't go, that we go on. So it has also helped out a lot of people to understand the continuity of life. So I think a lot of people want to have self-induced NDEs to have afterlife awareness. And I don't think that's needed. I think you could use a lot of these tools to really tap into the things that are not beliefs, but they're clear knowings deep within ourselves, that we go on. So, but yeah, there are people who do past life readings. I don't provide that, but there are people who do that. I know Edgar Casey, for instance, would do, that kind of stuff in his readings as well, and just kind of go over the significance of the current situation, how that translates, to another lifetime. But I believe whatever we're going through has parallels, runs parallels with other different lifetimes as well, some stronger than others.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sherry.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us some interesting stories from some of your clients' regressions, any that have sort of blown your mind?
Yeah. As as a hypnotherapist, past life regression, my job is just to kind of take the information as it comes, like to not judge it. So, when we're doing the regression, a lot of times it's like we're taking them back to, different lifetimes here on Earth. But to your point, come to think of it, I've had a couple of clients who didn't necessarily believe in this stuff, but they were able to remember their other lives in different galaxies and existences.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like kind of like Lemurian, stuff like that, and just um, just other different galactical recollections and memories and other different forms of existence beyond this earth plane. So that was fascinating. That's not something that I was prepared to. Like normally in the regressions, like I was in ancient Egypt, I had a pitchfork in my hand. I was, just a lot of people. Everyone wants to be Cleopatra. There could only be 6 or 7 of them. So like everyone thinks they're Cleopatra before the reading, and I'm just like, the majority of people that I have are just kind of live these regular lives. They might be at war, they might just be working the land. Um, but the fascinating part is they're able to clearly recognize their loved ones in this lifetime and who that loved one was in another lifetime. And it's not always a spouse. Sometimes the dynamic is different, where the spouse that you have could be a sibling. And it sounds, a little messy, but you know, it's a new life, it's a new chapter. There's new dynamics to be healed.
Yeah. And for people that have these awarenesses of the different roles that we play, like I was a man and one wife, and I was a woman, and I was your father, and then I was your mother, and then I was your sister, then I was your lover. I mean, how does it change people? Because we see ourselves so much through the roles and especially in relationship,
Right.
when you have this stuff on your father, you're like, my father wasn't nice to me, and you have this stuff. And then when you see that maybe in a past life, your father was a woman and he was your lover. I mean,
Right.
how does it change people's relationship?
I think it's very cathartic.
Mm.
They're able to understand, oh, geez, wow, that explains why there's such tension or so much, the inverse, such harmony, that, a lot of people can't understand why this lifetime contributes to all of the dynamics that they may have.
Mhm.
And so I think it's very cathartic to people. But the more important thing is to be able to understand that was then and this is now. And our job is just to be those roles. Each time we kind of catch ourselves, in subconscious behavior that other lifetime, we are able to make it more conscious. We're able to make it more aware. And so we say, okay, that was then, but now the assignment is for me to learn how to be a kid, and, I'm not the parent. I mean, for instance, when I was very young, my dad always tells me the story that I had him. I was probably like 2 or 3 years old, and I had him in this intense headlock, and he couldn't get out. And I find out through like a lot of different readings that I was always like an older sibling to him, and we
Yeah.
just had this power struggle. And now I've learned that okay, I'm having this defiance or this power struggle because not in this life, but because of others. And it's just was kind of weird to see myself in a younger role, you know, when I'm used to being the older one.
Yeah.
But I think having that awareness has really helped out, and it's allowed me to understand, okay, this is his time. My time is my job is to take a little bit of a back seat and just allow him, that role. That's what he needs to balance the
Mhm.
karma out. That's what's needed. And so there's no better, no worse. It's just different roles that we play. There's different scenes, different roles, but it's all could really enhance with awareness that this, isn't all that there is, and that there's a reason for this. This is not random. There's greater reasonings for the dynamics that we have.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So you've recognized your father in a past life. Any other people in your life that you've known in a past life that you've had roles with?
He's like the real strong one, but I have a feeling like there's a lot of people that I'm close to that I have, connectiveness beyond this life. And I think not just biological, but, friends of mine that I just knew that we had to have, either a sibling or a spouse relationship. And some of those friends are even the same gender. where we were a man and a woman or something like that. So absolutely. And you think about it, how many billions of people on the planet are there, and so for you to have a powerful dynamic with that person, what are the chances? There's something usually to it. Um, but it's like with some people that know us so well, it's like we can't impress it. They just know who we are. We can't fool them. There's transparency with who we are. They see us in just this very familiar way. Um, they see the real you.
Yeah, I remember reading in the book Autobiography of a Yogi that a Yogananda could recognize somebody that he knew that had transitioned when they had reincarnated. And I had, I can't remember, I had asked to sort of like, oh, that'd be cool. I'd like to know that. So I can recognize people when they come back. And, my father and mother have both reincarnated and a few other people. But it's so interesting to watch, to have been present in my life as the daughter of my mother. She died when I was young and she was 50. And now she's like 25. And to watch the continuity of desire and to watch the relationship that she has with my brother, because she's my brother's daughter. They had the same relationship as mother and son as they do as father and daughter. It's a fraught sort of relationship. And so they're working out, they're still working out. There's this continuity of life. Yeah, it's so fascinating.
Right. People think that once we get there, we just stop learning, that we're always learning. That's what life is. It's always expanding. It's always continuing.
It's always
always
continuing.
Becoming greater expressions of who we are, and more just divine instruments, and closer to the divine, I think. And that's what this life is about over there. It's about life itself, which to me is continuity, expansiveness, evolution. So we evolve there, we evolve here too.
Yeah.
Always...
And I think because we're in this accelerated learning process as we shift into a new consciousness, that reincarnation is happening fairly soon when we've got the whole of time to play with, prehistoric to the future. Why would we elect to come back, a few years after we've died, or 20 years, or sometimes people come back even before they died? That happened with a friend of mine. Like his little grandson was about 2 and he was transitioning. And I was told that he was his grandson before he'd even left his physical body. I'm like, whoa, it's so interesting that we're electing to come back so quickly. And I think that if there is unfinished business, unfinished lessons learned, or karma as it's called, that we want to come back and do it in this time, because this is this time of awakening and clearing. And what do you think about that?
Absolutely. And I think really, the mind of heaven is learning, to be present, because I think when we're over here, we almost crave going to heaven. We're in heaven in a way. Sometimes we miss the polarity of being human.
Exactly.
And what that was like. So, and that sounds crazy to think being here now, but, I have memories of myself, over there. And in every reading, they're like, wow, you get pretty antsy over there. You always want to come back here, so I'm kind of weird. Maybe I'm just kind of weird, but, we miss like the not knowing part, or the not having everything in front of us. And it just life itself. So, is hell over there? No, hell could be over here, but heaven could be here too.
Yeah.
When you're in the light, there's no hell, but hell could be very much like a human thing. But I found that, as beautiful as the other side is, you could find these beautiful, deep experiences here in this life, which are just as profound, just as beautiful. And, you could find heaven here. You really can. You just have to look deeper within, beyond the surface.
I've just found heaven. I'm looking at Brad and his cat. Can I put you on camera, Brad?
It's Caturday.
Can I put you on camera?
Yeah.
Look.
So for those of you who don't know me, for some reason, it must be a past life thing. I'm terrified of cats. I don't know why.
No, really?
I must have like been eaten by cats in ancient Egypt or something. Like, I don't know like what my deal is, but like I'm a dog. I gravitate to like retrievers and dogs, but cats, from what I understand, they're very developed pineal glands. And I think that's why a lot of psychics and mediums have them, because they're just almost these psychic antennas, in a way.
Absolutely.
And this guy looks like he's meditating here. It's very, very zen.
Well, when I was looking at him before, he was watching you intently. He was like staring at you.
Yeah. Yeah, you just gotta light some incense by this guy and give him a robe, and he's like a Buddhist monk, you know. It's very
So,
chilled.
so you're still afraid of cats, Jack?
Well, not now. Now that I'm on the screen, I feel safe with Brad's cat. But
But if you have a cat,
this is part of my exposure therapy. You know,
Mhm.
from a distance, gradually I'm feeling more safe with the cat. It is Caturday, so you know, it's their day. I'm embracing it. So yeah.
Is it Caturday today? Is it?
Well, you say Saturday, we call Saturdays Caturdays.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Caturday. Thanks, Brad. Have you got any
But
questions?
every day is Caturday to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Has anyone else got? If no one's got any questions, we might leave it there. Unless Jake, you've got anything else you want to share with us? Let me hear. Pat. Pat's got a question. I'm still curious about the connect. Where's Pat? Do you want to come on? Where are you, Pat? You want to come on camera, Pat? Oh, there you are. There you are. There you are. There. I'm going to pop you on. Tell me if it's no.
Well,
Hey, Pat.
hello. In your previous interview with Karen, you talked a little bit about Wayne Dyer. And so I'm still kind of curious if he's acting as your guide now, or do you still communicate with him? And was there a previous relationship with him in another lifetime?
It's a very, very strong connection that I have. I mean, when he was around, you know, in the physical, I would never follow any of his work. It just, to me, like my own human mind felt like he was just too perfect for me to relate to. It just seemed like this Hay House author that was born under a rainbow, and I just couldn't relate to it. It just seemed too perfect. But you know, after his passing, he just came to me very clearly and said, "I'm going to be helping you in your work." And I'm like, "All right, are you choosing like a boring guy like me? Like, you know, shouldn't you choose someone else?" And he's like, "No, no, no, I'm going to be helping you." Fine, okay. You know, so flash forward several years later, you know, I'm writing my book, and was connected somehow to Anita Morjani, and Wayne was really very much a big part of having Anita go on the stage, because I think Wayne had cancer, and Anita's story from healing from cancer really spoke to Wayne, and he was very much a part of editing her book and helping her with her book and getting her the confidence, you know, to get out there from, you know, when she's living in Hong Kong. And Anita actually endorsed my book. And for a first time author, like that doesn't happen. Anita Morjani to endorse, you know, someone's first book doesn't happen, but okay. And then, you know, a couple other people who are authors were just so pivotal in my book, and Wayne helped them with their books too. So it's
Mm.
just almost kind of like the people that Wayne was connected to and he mentored, they were paying it forward. So like he was using a lot of his army. So Life After Breath, the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder has a lot of people that Wayne was involved with, you know, that helped me through it. So it's really about paying forward. So when we see a lot of these teachers out there, behind all of them or most of them is Wayne. You know, Wayne was
Oh,
so
wow.
pivotal in a lot of these teachers, and just oftentimes behind the scene. But also we have a Long Island connection because Wayne, you know, lived, you know, a couple minutes from where I do here, you know, when he worked, you know, in the city school. And I think what helped Wayne was, you know, he was about to get tenure from St. John's, but there was just this calling that he had, you know, the call to service beyond, you know, tenure in the safe life. And it was almost kind of like the Buddha. The Buddha could have lived a very, you know, safe material life, but the Buddha just went on a limb and, you know, found something totally else. And Wayne, you know, gave all that away because really he was tapping into something that was a greater purpose beyond academia. So I admire him for that. And he's just one of the most generous guys. Like, you know, he would bump into people at beaches and people would know him, and he would just ask like an assistant or family member to drop off. He would ask for their address and you'd drop off all their books right at their front of their porch. Just the most generous, loving, sweetest guy. And I think for anyone in the field, any author, he's a perfect guy to really model yourself after. But also very fun, very funny, very fun. Just, you know, would love to mess around too as well. And he just was like a real guy too. He wasn't just this, you know, crazy, you know, high up teacher. He was very relatable as well. But we're both Tauruses too, so that's another connecting point. But in my work, I still feel him. You know, sometimes, you know, if you knew anything about Wayne, he would want to get up at like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning to do his writing. They call it like the hour of the wolf, but really it's when your mind is most receptive to higher information from being in that place between here and there. And so sometimes I wake up
Mhm.
early in the morning and I know that's Wayne just wanting me to get on that computer and write that post or that book. And sometimes I cuss at him, but I know he's wanted me to get up early sometimes, and he just, he really comes through me a lot in my teachings and my work. So
Thank you.
I'm eternal grateful for him. Really just a profound teacher. And some people could leave this world, but they have such an impact that it feels like they're still more here than most people. Like they're still like present physically here.
Yeah.
That's how it feels with him. He still feels like he's very much here.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Yeah, oh, that's beautiful. He absolutely is. He was such a dedicated teacher.
Right.
And that dedication to the upliftment of humanity, the consciousness, doesn't end because your body does. He's working through many people.
Right.
Yeah.
But the job is that I think the issue is many people don't become like spiritual teachers or don't become authors because they think, at least I thought this myself, I'd be like, all right, I have to have like a long beard like Lao Tzu, to do this stuff. And like maybe one day when I'm like 80,000 years old and I walk around in a cane and a robe, maybe I could be a teacher. And as sometimes we have synonymous identity with the physical body versus what's within the soul. I think we all have this brilliant wisdom and this brilliant soul that's timeless, that's beyond the body. But I think a lot of people think that, oh my God, I have to earn all these things in order to like get on an interview.
Now, what do
And
you
no,
call it again? Cognitive reframing. Yeah, like
cognitive reframing. But
so what you're saying is the successful teachers of the past looked like this. Do I have to be like them in order to be a teacher? But in fact, there are so many different aspects of humanity. There's the young, there's the hippie, there's the conservative, there's the religion, there's the atheist.
right.
And they all need to hear, they all need to have someone
sure.
that can speak to their mindset.
Right.
Like they won't listen to a guy with a beard. And like I find in the younger generation want to speak to younger teachers. And
Right.
like
They
my
gravitate.
generation, look at the people that are online. Sorry if you're not, they're my generation.
No, we're good. We're good. We're all young and vibing, and
But
we're
do
all
you know what I
young
mean?
and hip.
It's like they relate.
Yeah.
They relate to the teacher that's sort of more like them. So yeah.
No, but I think we have to start seeing ourselves as a soul,
Yeah.
and how ancient we are deep within, and how so much of what we're doing is from accumulation of so many different lifetimes and understanding from those lifetimes. And doing this kind of work, I think the best way to learn is often to teach. And
Yeah,
so many people think
absolutely.
that I have to be just pristine perfect in order to teach. No.
Right.
And some videos I look at from years ago and I'm like, damn, I said that. But other videos I'm like, geez, that wasn't. But it's a learning process. And in the moment, you're doing the best that you can, and then you step up, you evolve with each, teaching, each interview, each book, should be better than next. Much like each generation. Should we stop having kids because kids are going to be imperfect? No, it's an evolutionary process that we all have as seekers and as teachers. Where each moment we're doing the best that we can, but we continue to do that by staying on the field, and chipping away at the masterpiece within that we all have.
I think that's one of the most profound things you've said. The best way to learn is to teach. Yeah. And I would say that to everyone online and everyone watching this, either now or afterwards, that, if you really want to learn this work, start your groups, get a little group, teach it. Like,
now, I'm not saying to not do my classes. I'm not saying don't do my class and all of a sudden, put me on the streets, right?
But
the
student and the teacher, the student and the teacher, if you see yourself as a teacher and you've got nothing else to learn, then you're lost, right? Like you're forever
We're
the
not
student.
talking about that.
Yeah, you're forever the student.
The best teachers are the best students too. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. The best teachers are the best students. Absolutely. And Wayne, actually, speaking of Wayne, I remember hearing him at the Abraham conferences. Like he had been a teacher for years and he's a best-selling author with 1 million books. And he was sitting before the Abraham wisdom, asking questions, with this curious mind of, almost like a beginner, like the enthusiasm in his questioning, the Abraham. Yeah. And exactly, the best students are the best teachers. Yeah. Well, darling one, do you want any last messages before we go off the live?
Well, what I would say is, once we think we know it all, there's a lot of stagnation. When we come with curiosity and exploration, there's just infinite grounds that we could really gain. from that perspective. But it starts with curiosity. And so I know you're giving his example, but we see this kind of people, and they know this stuff, but they look at it as if it's the first time they're ever hearing it. And so I think the smartest people ask the most questions.
Yeah.
The smartest one in the room is the one who's asking the questions. That, is very telling. So it's very admirable. But in our society, we sometimes run away from that. We just think it's like, in order to be smart, it's like you don't ask questions. But no, that's not true.
Yeah.
That's how we learn.
Absolutely. What did you say? The smartest ones, the ones that ask the most
Well,
questions.
Brad's trying to show off and being the
Oh,
smartest
Brad.
one in the room.
Oh,
so
Brad, do you want to?
raising his hand? Yeah.
Karen, I was just like, who was the guy you interviewed who had that awful motorcycle accident in Long Island?
Stephen Weber.
Okay, yeah, I was curious, Jacob, if you had connected with him. For some reason, I was thinking about him when you were talking, and I was wondering if you guys connected with. Not that where you live is a small town by any means, but I was just curious if you guys connect.
It's small. We all know each other. Yeah. Actually, Steve once attended, early on my past life regression, session. That's where we met. And I think his wife, was kind of interested in this stuff, and she recommended me to, this was kind of like he was getting early on and into this stuff, after his NDE. So he attended the regression. That's where he met. But Steven has a wonderful story, and someone like him, really is very validating, because the life that he lives now has nothing to do with the life that he lived pre-NDE. There's so much difference of the after effects that he has, and the undeniable change. So it's just fascinating. But yeah, he's great. We see him around. He goes between here and Florida though, so he's probably here in the summertime. But a great dude. We've crossed paths a couple times.
Yeah, because also he had there was like sort of like a part B to his NDA, where all of a sudden you're listening to his NDA and then he's like, oh, P.S. and then my son died, because and there was that whole angle to how he dealt with that, and it was pretty intense. And it just, I feel like, I was just wondering if, you guys had connected, because there was a lot that I could understand you would be dealing, with him regarding that too.
Definitely know him. Yeah, and I know there's a whole love story too with his NDE too. So a lot of layers to his NDE. Definitely profoundly impacted the life that he lives today. Yeah.
Thanks, Brady.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go off the live, but people who are on Zoom, please stay on Zoom, because we're going to, keep chatting for a little bit longer. But thanks for everyone who's been watching the live stream on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We've been streaming. I'd love to stream on other platforms too, but Restream doesn't stream on Odyssey and other video platforms, but I will upload these to the other platforms. And thank you again for being with us, Jake.
Thank you. An honor.